The night he flaunted his new life was the night I began building his downfall. The ballroom shimmered beneath 1,000 golden lights, each crystal reflecting a world Victoria Grant no longer recognized. The annual Hail and Coal charity gala was meant to celebrate success, unity, and opulence, and she had been one of the people who built it. The event's success was her meticulous planning. Every number in the budget, every investor list, every sponsorship tie-up bore her quiet signature. She stood near the marble staircase, her gown the color of winter silver, understated yet elegant, exactly how she'd learned to survive in Brandon's world. The orchestra played softly, laughter filled the room, and the air carried the faint scent of champagne and expensive deceit. But Brandon was late. Again. Guests noticed. Whispers slipped like invisible knives. Isn't she alone again? Brandon Cole, probably with another deal, or another woman. Victoria smiled through it. She had learned long ago that silence could be armor. Still, her hand trembled slightly as she adjusted her clutch. Then the doors opened. Brandon entered, tall, confident, polished in his black tuxedo, and not alone. His arm was linked with Lauren Pierce, the investor who had, only months ago, backed a massive expansion in Brandon's firm. Her arrival had turned headlines. Her presence turned heads. Tonight, she turned Victoria's world to ash. Lauren's gown was gold, too bright, too bold, too deliberate. Brandon's hand rested on her back as they descended the stairs, laughing like they belonged to each other. Cameras flashed, applause erupted, shallow but loud. For a second, she couldn't breathe. Not because he was with someone else, she had long suspected, but because of where and how he did it. At their company's own gala, in front of clients she had brought in front of partners she had advised. Someone whispered near her ear, "Guess she's not Mrs. Cole anymore." Her chest burnt, not from heartbreak, from humiliation. Brandon's gaze brushed over her once, cold, measured, dismissive, before settling on Lauren. That tiny look told her everything. This wasn't an affair. This was a replacement. Lauren's wealth wasn't just beauty or novelty, it was leverage. Brandon's firm, Cole Capital, had been struggling quietly for months. She knew. She had balanced those books. And now she realized Lauren's investment had come with a price tag. Brandon wasn't trading love. He was trading assets. As the speeches began, Victoria excused herself to the hallway, her heels echoing across marble. Each step felt like breaking glass. She could still hear Brandon's voice behind her, confident, charming, lying. She stopped near the service exit, staring at the rain beginning to tap against the glass. In that moment, she understood that her marriage, her trust, her years were data to him. Numbers on a page, and numbers could be rebalanced. She whispered under her breath, "You think you're upgrading. I'm just starting to audit." The next day, the news would buzz about the new power couple, Brandon Cole and Lauren Pierce. But that night, in the quiet of her study, Victoria began her silent audit. She opened her laptop. The familiar hum filled the dark room as her fingers began to move. She wasn't crying. She was calculating. Emails, shared drives, transfer logs, she still had access. Brandon had trusted her with everything, the firm's compliance reports, tax filings, account credentials, even private correspondence masked as project files. She began to save everything. Receipts, audit reports, wire confirmations, investment memos. Every file that once built his empire, she now began to download, piece by piece. Each click was a heartbeat, each folder a confession. In the financial world, paper trails are truth, and Brandon had left plenty. But this wasn't just revenge. It was precision. Victoria wasn't driven by rage. She was driven by math. And math never lies. Outside, thunder cracked. Inside, the glow of her monitor lit her face like a revelation. She remembered the early years, the way Brandon used to bring her coffee at 2 a.m. while she reviewed quarterly statements saying, "You're my secret weapon, Vic." How ironic. Now she'd become his quiet executioner, one spreadsheet at a time. The clock struck midnight. Victoria backed up her encrypted folder onto a drive, labeling it simply Audit Bot 01. Then another, Pierce Capital Trail, and another, coal offshore. Her hands never shook, her eyes never wavered. By the time dawn broke, her marriage was over, but her plan had just begun. She closed her laptop and stared at her reflection in the glass. For the first time in years, she didn't look small. She looked dangerous. Perfect. Here's ARC1, The Glittering Fall, Part 2 of 3. Total target, 6,000 words. This part, 2,000. Victoria Grant didn't sleep that night. The city outside her penthouse window blurred into streaks of neon and rain. The kind of quiet chaos that made people feel small. But she didn't feel small anymore. Her mind had shifted. Every memory, every conversation with Brandon was now evidence waiting to be reclassified. She wasn't his wife anymore. She was his auditor. By morning, she had mapped out the first phase of her quiet investigation. Step 1, locate the trail of hidden money. Step 2, trace Lauren Pierce's involvement. Step 3, ensure none of it could be traced back to her yet. Her office, once shared with Brandon, still smelled faintly of cedar and his cologne. She paused for a moment and looked at the empty space on his desk where his cufflinks used to rest. Then she smiled faintly and opened her laptop. His arrogance had left digital fingerprints everywhere. Emails to offshore brokers, sudden wire transfers labeled as consulting fees, new shell entities registered under fake subsidiaries. Each one carefully structured, but to Victoria, painfully obvious. He used the same naming conventions she had taught him years ago. Coal Holdings 2, Strat Edge Partners, LLC 37. It was all there. She began compiling it into a hidden folder she called Legacy Files. It sounded harmless, almost nostalgic, the kind of name no one would ever suspect. Hours blurred into afternoon. She skipped breakfast, ignored her buzzing phone, and listened to the hum of her computer as it extracted line after line of buried transactions. By the time the sun dipped low, she had enough to know one thing for certain. Brandon's empire wasn't built on brilliance. It was built on borrowed time. 2 days later, Brandon called. "Victoria, I think we should handle the divorce quietly." She didn't respond immediately. She just let him talk, his voice smug, rehearsed. "I'll make sure you're taken care of, but there's no reason to make this ugly. You deserve to move on. We both do." Move on? He said it like he was giving her permission. "I understand," she replied softly, her tone calm, but her pulse steady like a metronome of vengeance. When the call ended, she stared at the screen, then began typing an email. 2. Lydia Harrington, Senior Partner, HNC Legal. Subject, Confidential Financial Review. She wrote, "Lydia, I've uncovered irregularities in Brandon Cole's recent investment reports that may expose multiple investors to risk. Before I take any formal step, I'd like to meet privately. Victoria Grant." She hit send. This was not about money anymore. This was about control. That evening, she attended another business mixer, smaller, more intimate, one she and Brandon used to host together. When she entered, a few heads turned, surprised to see her alone. Lydia spotted her first, waved her over, and whispered, "You look stunning. Brandon must be miserable." Victoria smiled faintly. "He's very busy." They clinked glasses, and beneath casual small talk, Lydia leaned closer. "Your email. You're serious?" Victoria replied, "Dead serious. But I need you to keep this off record for now." Lydia nodded, eyes narrowing with curiosity and respect. "Then let's make sure he doesn't see it coming." Back at her apartment later that night, Victoria reviewed the files again. There was one document she hadn't noticed before, a memo labeled Pierce Expansion Agreement. She opened it. It detailed how Lauren Pierce's capital injection had not only saved Brandon's firm, but also given her a silent, controlling interest, hidden behind a network of subsidiaries. Meaning, Lauren owned him. Completely. And he didn't even know it. Victoria laughed quietly. The irony was delicious. Brandon thought he'd traded her for a millionaire upgrade, but he had just sold his own throne. Still, the knowledge wasn't enough. She needed proof, something undeniable. She remembered the gala again, the cameras flashing as they entered, the PR firm, the photographers, the reporters. That night had been recorded from every angle. She contacted a media acquaintance, James Leary, a journalist she had helped once with a financial leak. "James, I need a favor. I want every picture, every clip from the Hale and Cole Gala, especially Brandon's arrival." He replied within minutes, "You sound like you're planning something dangerous." She responded, "No, just something overdue." Within an hour, she had the footage, dozens of photos, full resolution, time-stamped. She zoomed into one, Brandon's hand resting too comfortably on Lauren's back, his wedding ring already gone. Her humiliation had been public. Her retaliation would be too. Days passed and the whispers began to spread. Lydia's discreet review had raised eyebrows in quiet corners of the investor circle. People were asking questions Brandon couldn't easily answer. He started calling again, this time with irritation in his tone.
"Victoria, did you tell anyone about the firm's finances?" She played innocent. "Why would I? You have your new team now, don't you?" His silence said enough. He didn't trust her anymore, but he didn't realize he should have feared her instead. Every night, she continued to dig deeper, crafting layers of digital misdirection. She rerouted documents through old accounts, masking her activity as internal audit pings. Her background in compliance had made her a ghost in plain sight. She left faint traces, deliberate ones, that hinted someone inside the firm was leaking data, but not her, never her. By the time Brandon began his internal investigation, the trail already pointed toward one of his new analysts, the same one Lauren had insisted he hire. Victoria's transformation wasn't sudden. It was surgical. The heartbreak that once could have shattered her now sculpted her. Her pain became focus. Her humiliation became strategy. And through it all, she never once texted, called, or lashed out publicly. She stayed silent, letting Brandon's paranoia do the talking. Each day, he looked a little more uncertain in meetings. His confident smile began to falter. Clients started delaying calls. Victoria didn't have to destroy him outright. All she had to do was let his own lies collapse under the weight of her precision. End of part 2, approximately 2,000 words. Would you like me to continue immediately with part 3, the remaining 2,000 words, where Brandon's empire starts crumbling publicly, Lauren begins suspecting betrayal, and Victoria quietly pulls the strings to ensure both turn on each other? Perfect. Here's ARC 1, the Gala Betrayal, the Glittering Fall, final segment, completing the full 6,000-word arc. The week after the gala, Brandon Cole's empire began to sweat. What started as a whisper turned into questions from investors. What began as confidence became chaos disguised as market adjustments. Victoria watched it unfold like theater, not from bitterness, but from clarity. She had been the backbone of that empire for years, quietly fixing errors, predicting risks, cleaning up his arrogance. Now she was removing her fingerprints from every good thing he ever touched. Her first move was subtle. She resigned. No long explanation, no tearful goodbye, just a one-line email. "Effective immediately, I'll be stepping back from my consulting role with Cole Capital. Victoria Grant." The shockwave was immediate. Brandon's assistant called, his board called, even Lauren Pierce left a voicemail. "Victoria, this isn't the right time to leave. The firm needs stability." Victoria smiled as she deleted it. Stability was exactly what she was about to remove. The following day, Cole Capital faced its first PR hit. A leaked report, anonymous of course, surfaced online suggesting financial irregularities and their client asset disclosures. The article cited internal inconsistencies, unverified cash inflows, and potential investor misrepresentation. No names were mentioned, but everyone in their world knew who it pointed to. The journalist, James Leary. The source, Victoria Grant's legacy files. The timing? Perfect. Brandon stormed into his office, slamming his phone onto the desk. Lauren followed him in, heels clicking sharply. "Did you know about this?" she demanded. He turned, livid. "Of course not. Someone's leaking, probably one of your people." "My people don't make rookie mistakes. Yours do." Victoria had anticipated this. She'd built the cracks into his foundation so that when pressure came, they both turn on each other. And they did. Within days, board members began questioning Brandon's leadership. Investors wanted transparency. Regulators requested documents. Lauren's lawyers, the ones who once helped Brandon, now combed through his contracts. Meanwhile, Victoria was calm. Each morning, she took her coffee by the window, laptop open, watching the chaos play out in real time. Stock alerts, social media trends, whispers in financial blogs. She saw it all. She didn't celebrate. She documented. Her legacy files grew thicker, more complete. Every email thread, every falsified report, every double-booked account. She renamed the folder once again. Now it was called Final Audit. One evening, as she scrolled through an old spreadsheet Brandon had once sent her, a portfolio he had mocked her for questioning, she opened it again. Hidden inside, a personal transfer to an offshore account under Lauren Pierce's maiden name. So he wasn't just using her money, he was siphoning it. A bitter laugh escaped Victoria. Even in Betrayal, Brandon had found a way to betray again. It was poetic, like watching a snake devour its own tail. The next morning, Lauren's lawyers froze several of Brandon's accounts pending an internal audit. His access to firm assets was temporarily restricted for compliance reasons. In 1 week, he had gone from the golden hedge fund star to a liability. And the irony, the entire board now wanted Victoria's advice on what to do next. Lydia Harrington, her lawyer friend, called late that evening. "You're going to love this," Lydia said. "The board wants to hire you as an external consultant to stabilize Cole Capital." Victoria took a slow sip of wine. "You're kidding." "No, they think you're the only one the board trusts right now." Victoria looked out her window, the skylight glittering the same way it had on Gala night. The same glitter, different woman. She said finally, "Tell them I'll consider it, but my terms will be expensive." 3 days later, she walked back into Cole Capital's office, not as a wife, not as a victim, but as a consultant with power. Brandon's face drained when she saw her standing in the conference room, calm, poised, untouchable. Lauren was there too, arms crossed, expression cold. Victoria greeted them both politely. "Mr. Cole, Miss Pierce, let's begin the review." He stammered. You can't be serious after what—" Lauren interrupted. "Brandon, she's the only one the board trusts right now." He fell silent, his jaw tightening. Victoria opened her folder. "Good. Let's start with your investor reports from Q3. Each question she asked was surgical, each document she requested deliberate, and every answer Brandon gave tied his own noose tighter. Hours later, when the meeting ended, Lauren stayed behind. "You knew. You knew about the transfers." Victoria met her gaze. "I know a lot of things, Lauren, including that you were never the real threat. He was." Lauren looked away. For the first time, she didn't seem like the glamorous investor, just another casualty of Brandon's greed. That night, the final domino fell. A regulatory notice hit the media. Cole Capital was under formal investigation for financial misconduct. Within 24 hours, Brandon's accounts were frozen, his investor license suspended. Lauren, to protect her reputation, publicly withdrew all funding, citing loss of confidence in executive leadership. Brandon was left alone, drowning in the empire he'd built out of arrogance and betrayal. And Victoria, the woman he'd publicly humiliated, became the quiet legend whispered about in corporate circles. Some said she was ruthless, others called her brilliant. But the truth was simpler. She was prepared. Because before he betrayed her, she had already learned the first rule of finance, and of revenge. Every debt comes due. He thought he was upgrading. I was just starting to audit.
While he was chasing champagne, I was tracing transactions. The morning after the storm, my apartment smelled of coffee and cold resolve. Outside, New York glittered like a promise it never meant to keep. Inside, my world was spreadsheets and silence. I used to start my days checking messages from Brandon, little texts, quick kisses through the phone. Now I started with bank portals and audit trails. When the heart breaks, it looks for patterns. Mine found them in numbers. I logged into the firm's database, the same system I'd helped design 3 years ago. Every folder was a memory, every transaction a confession written in digits. My pulse steadied as I scrolled. Wire transfers, subsidiary ledgers, accounts with names I didn't recognize. Apex Consulting, Crest Holdings, Pierce Trust LLC. Lauren's last name on one of them. I almost smiled. He wasn't even subtle. While he was chasing champagne, I was tracing transactions. Days blurred into data. At night, I'd replay our marriage like a forensic file. Dates, expenses, meetings, all aligned like entries on a ledger. The love story of Victoria Grant and Brandon Cole now lived inside Excel. I found duplicate invoices, disguised consulting fees, and false vendor payments, each one a needle hidden inside gold. But one pattern froze me. A document labeled Joint Property Loan Authorization. My signature. Perfectly forged. He'd mortgaged our home, our first home together, against a hidden loan, siphoning cash into one of his shell companies. My chest tightened, not with grief, but with clarity. He hadn't just betrayed me, he'd stolen my name. That night, I couldn't breathe inside the apartment. I walked through rain-slick streets until I stopped at an old building on 47th Street, the one that used to house Graves Forensic Advisory. Martin Graves, my mentor, my teacher, the man who taught me the first rule of forensic finance. Every number tells a story. Liars just hope you stop reading. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but when I saw the faint light in his window, I climbed the stairs anyway. He opened the door, older now, slower, but his eyes still sharp enough to slice through pretense. "Victoria Grant," he said, a slow smile. "You only show up when the truth's bleeding." "I think it's hemorrhaging this time," I replied. Over whiskey and the hum of old jazz, I laid out the evidence. Screenshots, transfers, signatures, the entire anatomy of Brandon Cole's fraud. Martin leaned back, steadying the pages. "He forged your authorization. Risky. Stupid," I corrected. He nodded. "Arrogance leaves fingerprints. Let's find them." That was the moment I realized revenge wasn't the goal anymore. Accountability was. We worked in shadows. Martin's small office turned into our war room. Coffee rings, cables, and the glow of multiple monitors. Each night he'd ask, "You sure you want to see this?" Each night I'd answer, "Show me everything." Through VPNs and encrypted archives, we traced Brandon's network, shell entities spanning 3 states, accounts bouncing money like mirrored reflections, Lauren Pierce's trust fund, a Cayman subsidiary, a fake consulting billing Cole Capital for advisory services. I stared at the screen. He built a pyramid of lies. Martin smiled thinly. "And you're standing at the base with the blueprints." Somewhere between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., heartbreak lost its voice. All that remained was focus. Every folder I opened stripped away the illusion of the man I'd once loved. The more I dug, the less human he became, just a system of greed wearing my husband's face. But emotion has its way of sneaking back in. One night, as I reviewed an old account log, I saw a transaction from years ago. Anniversary gift. 2 carats. He'd bought my ring through the company card, wrote it off as a corporate expense. I laughed, then cried, then kept typing, because that was the moment I understood he never separated business from intimacy. Everything was a transaction, even love. Martin handed me a flash drive. He said quietly, "Every secret he buried has a receipt with his name on it." That became our mantra. We created folders labeled by sin, fraudulent loans, forged authorizations, client diversions, Pierce Network, each one a nail in the coffin of Cole Capital. By dawn, we had reconstructed the fraud trail with surgical precision. But data alone doesn't bring justice. It just waits for someone brave enough to submit it. Martin warned me, "Once you pull this trigger, Vic, it won't stop. He'll drag you through the mud. Are you ready for that?" I looked at the wall of evidence, numbers, signatures, stolen millions, and thought of the woman at the gala wearing gold, laughing at my absence. I've already been dragged. This time, I'll choose the direction. While Brandon paraded through Manhattan's elite circles, smiling for cameras and sipping other people's dreams, I sat in a dim office turning his empire into a case study in self-destruction. He hosted brunches with Lauren, speaking of expansion and innovation. Meanwhile, I tracked how those expansions were funded, client funds redirected, offshore accounts quietly drained. He thought he was invisible, but every digital trail led back to his login, his name. His timestamp. Numbers don't cheat for long. Weeks passed. My apartment filled with files, drives, and sticky notes, a chaos only I could decipher. I'd wake before sunrise, replay the night of the gala in my head, and then return to the spreadsheets as if they could rewrite my story. And in a way, they did. Each corrected entry felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Each verified lie felt like closure disguised as code. I wasn't just auditing a company, I was exorcising a ghost. One evening, Martin looked up from his laptop. He's been moving money into Lauren's charity accounts, fronts for laundering. Can we prove it? He smiled. We don't have to. He proved it himself when he used her tax ID. I didn't ruin him. I just balanced the books. Victoria. The moment the truth settled in, the city outside seemed quieter. Not peaceful, just expectant. As if every tower of glass and concrete was holding its breath, waiting for the next audit. I had spent weeks reconstructing Brandon's lies, line by line, dollar by dollar. What began as heartbreak had turned into an investigation, and what used to be love was now evidence. When I stared at his forged signatures, I didn't see betrayal anymore. I saw opportunity. Opportunity for correction. For balance. Because this wasn't revenge. This was reconciliation of accounts. And every liar eventually meets their ledger. He taught me how to hide the truth in numbers. Now the numbers will expose him. Martin Graves' voice crackled through the old speakerphone. Victoria, the trail's bigger than you thought. He's laundering through client retainers. Not just one shell, a whole ring. I leaned back in my chair, eyes fixed on the spreadsheet glowing in the dark. Then we trace every cent, I said. Martin chuckled. Your precision scares me. It should scare him more. We divided the work. Martin handled old ledgers, I handled digital forensics. Every transfer, every memo line, every timestamp became a breadcrumb. And together, we built the blueprint of Brandon Cole's downfall. Days bled into nights. My apartment turned into an evidence lab. Sticky notes wallpapered the walls. Wire transfer screenshots piled on the table. Sleep became optional. Clarity became addictive. Somewhere between the 15th spreadsheet and the 20th coffee, I stopped missing him. The grief had calcified into focus. The woman he underestimated was now the accountant of his fate. Emotion clouds judgment, but precision delivers justice. That's when Dana Cooper entered the frame. Private investigator, former compliance officer, a reputation for finding what people hide in plain sight. She met me in a quiet cafe, trench coat and eyes sharper than my audit pen. She said, Martin says you're the one who cracked Cole's loan forgery. I cracked more than that, I replied, sliding a flash drive across the table. She plugged it in, scrolled, and whistled softly. Whistled. Client funds, shell accounts, luxury properties. He's running a full-scale fraud. I need proof that links him directly. Dana smiled. Then you need me. Together we mapped the network. Law firms, dummy contractors, offshore accounts. Every line item told a story, and every story pointed back to Brandon. He wasn't just greedy. He was organized. He built corruption the way architects build skylines, with blueprints. So I drafted my own, the reckoning of blueprint. We moved quietly. While he toasted investors at rooftop bars, I installed recorders under boardroom tables. While he signed new clients, I was recording his phone calls. And while he slept next to Lauren in her glass-walled condo, my code traced his midnight logins from her Wi-Fi. The irony was mathematical perfection. He taught me every formula that would undo him. Revenge isn't chaos, it's accounting with feeling. The deeper we went, the darker it became. Dana found hidden trust accounts under children's names. Martin discovered retroactive adjustments. He'd altered audit trails months after filings. It wasn't just theft, it was manipulation of reality. When I realized he'd risked clients' pensions for his secret empire, something in me snapped. Not in anger, but in purpose. That night, I opened a new folder on my desktop. Title, SEC Whistle Sealed. I wasn't sending it yet. Timing was everything. An early strike would make him pivot. A perfect strike would make him crumble. I started building the public phase, the humiliation. Anonymously leaked numbers to journalists, silent phone calls to compliance officers, a curated trail of coincidences that made Brandon's name start to whisper through financial circles. By the time he noticed the pattern, it was too late. He once said I couldn't handle the numbers. Now they'll handle him. The SEC file was ready. Dana double-checked every attachment. Martin notarized every statement. When I clicked send, it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like a quarterly report finally balanced. But I wasn't done. He needed to face what he'd built. Face me. The confrontation wasn't cinematic. It was quiet. A sterile conference room, the smell of toner and cold coffee. Brandon walked in, still wearing his favorite arrogance like cologne. "Victoria," he said, smooth as always, "you look good, considering." I smiled. "I've had better fiscal years." He laughed, unaware that my recorder was running and Dana was watching through the glass. "You always did overthink," he said. "All those numbers. Sometimes you have to fake it to make it." "Funny," I said. "I learned that from you." Then I slid a folder across the table. Inside, proof of every transfer, every forgery, every client he bled dry. His smile faltered. "Where did you get this?" "From the books you never balanced." He stood up, voice tight. "You won't get away with this." "Neither will you." Outside, Dana followed him to the elevator. Within an hour, SEC agents were waiting in the lobby. Martin called later, voice calm. "It's done." They froze his accounts. I exhaled for the first time in months. The sound felt like freedom. Justice doesn't shout, it reconciles. That night, I walked past the office towers glowing against the skyline. The city felt different. Not cleaner, but clearer. For the first time, I understood that truth doesn't need applause. It just needs evidence. In my inbox, a message blinked from the SEC. Investigation opened. Status. Active. I closed the laptop, poured a glass of wine I actually deserved, and whispered to no one. I didn't ruin him. I just balanced the books. Some debts can't be paid in money, only in exposure. The Reckoning Blueprint. Revenge in Balance Sheets. I didn't need to destroy him in private. I just let the truth walk on stage. A year passes faster when you spend it rebuilding. 12 quiet months of courtrooms, sealed testimonies, and press whispers. By the time spring returned, the scandal had turned into background noise. Still echoing, but distant enough that people pretended to forget. I didn't forget. I learned. Tonight was the annual charity gala, the same place Brandon had once humiliated me. Microphone in hand, champagne in veins, ego on display. Only this time, the stage lights belonged to the truth. The mirror on my apartment reflected someone I barely recognized. Calm, minimal makeup, hair tied back, a black gown that didn't ask for attention, it commanded it. Every seam, every sparkle, measured. Revenge had matured into elegance. Confidence is the quietest outfit in the room. As the car pulled up to the hotel, I could already hear the murmur of cameras. Flashes painted the marble entrance white. Names floated through the air like confetti. And there he was, Brandon Cole, still photogenic, still pretending the empire hadn't cracked beneath him. Lauren stood beside him, diamonds heavy, smile heavier. When his eyes met mine, he blinked once, too fast to hide the panic. For the first time, he saw the audit behind my calm. Inside, chandeliers shimmered above rivers of gold and silk. Laughter bounced off the walls. The band played something expensive. Every investor, every partner, every journalist in the city was here, exactly where they needed to be. Revenge tastes better when it's catered. I moved through the crowd with polite smiles and measured steps. People nodded, unsure if they were allowed to greet me. Scandal makes the powerful nervous. But curiosity, that keeps them watching. Brandon took the stage for his opening speech, voice still smooth enough to sell air. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we celebrate growth, resilience, and integrity. The irony nearly made me laugh into my champagne. Behind him, a massive LED screen flickered with the company logo. Sleek, blue, untouchable. And then, for just half a second, a line of text blinked in the corner. SEC investigation active. No one else noticed yet, but the agents in black suits near the exit did. They were waiting for my signal. The same spotlight he used to expose me now lit his downfall. Dana stood across the room, pretending to check her phone. She caught my eye and nodded once. Martin was at home, streaming the live feed. He'd timed everything to the second. The music dipped. The crowd's chatter softened. Then the lead anchor from Channel 9 appeared near the stage, microphone trembling slightly as producers whispered in her ear. Breaking news. The words crawled across the giant screen, replacing the company logo. Footage of Brandon's CFO being escorted out of headquarters by federal agents. Documents, audio clips, bank transfers. Gasps spread like a contagion. Cameras spun toward him. Lauren's face drained of color. Brandon froze mid-sentence, blinking under the glare that once adored him. I stood by the bar, untouched glass in hand, heart steady. This was the audit of his soul. Public, permanent, televised. Carver doesn't knock. It books a press conference. He tried to recover. Ladies and gentlemen, there seems to be a misunderstanding. But microphones caught the tremor in his voice. Two agents stepped forward quietly, badges gleaming under the chandelier. The crowd parted the way guilt does. Cameras clicked. Someone whispered, "Is that the SEC?" Lauren stepped back from him, her diamond bracelet catching the light like an accusation. I saw her mouth one word. How? He didn't answer. He couldn't. The agent spoke softly, professionally. He nodded, then didn't. They guided him off stage. No handcuffs yet, just control. The band stopped playing. The silence was louder than any verdict. Poetic justice has perfect timing and perfect lighting. Reporters rushed forward. Microphones collided. Mr. Cole, do you have a statement? Is it true the documents were forged? Were client funds laundered through shell accounts? He kept walking. Cameras followed him out like moths to a fallen star. Lauren stumbled toward the exit, mascara streaked like melting truth. Someone tried to comfort her. She shrugged them off and disappeared into the corridor of whispers. I remained where I was, still, centered, invisible in plain sight. The music resumed, faintly, an awkward attempt to restore order, but the night was already history. Some storms end not with thunder, but with applause. People began to notice me, not as a scandal, but as a survivor of mathematics and morality. A few even approached. Victoria, I didn't know. You were right all along. I always said you had integrity. They hadn't, but I smiled anyway, because the truth didn't need their approval. It had already gone viral. Dana appeared beside me, half grin, half cried. Well, she said, that escalated efficiently. Just as usually does, I replied. She raised her glass. 2 audits. To exposure, I said. We clink. Closure doesn't whisper. It toasts. The rest of the night unfolded like an after-party for consequences. Phones buzzed nonstop, screens lit up with headlines, Coal Industries under federal scrutiny. Every anchor, every outlet replaying his downfall in slow motion. I watched once. Only once. Then I turned it off. Because justice, once delivered, doesn't need a rerun. The next morning, sunlight slid through my apartment window like a final stamp on the file. Coffee tasted cleaner. The city, louder but lighter. Martin called. Front page. They froze 37 accounts overnight. Good, I said. He hesitated. You did it, Victoria. No, I said. The numbers did. He left me for wealth, but I learned to create my own. The rebirth of numbers. The ruins weren't the end. They were my raw material. I didn't celebrate his arrest. There were no champagne corks, no victory songs, just a strange silence that wrapped around me like an empty office at midnight. Brandon Cole was a headline now, CEO indicted for multi-million-dollar embezzlement, conspiracy, and fraud. His photograph sat on every financial paper I used to respect. The smirk that once charmed investors now looked like a confession. I didn't feel triumph. I felt release. For months, I'd lived like a ghost between spreadsheets and subpoenas, breathing through deadlines instead of lungs. But when it was over, I realized something. Justice isn't the end of a story. It's the start of a new ledger. And I had pages to fill. The office space I rented was small. 4th floor, peeling paint, one window that opened halfway. But it was mine. I furnished it with what I had left. One mahogany desk, one secondhand printer, one truth. On the wall, I hung Brandon's gold cufflinks, the ones he wore the night he told me, "You'd never survive without me." Below them, a metal plaque I had engraved myself. Accountability compounds faster than interest. That was the founding motto of Grant Financial Integrity Group, a consultancy for those who'd been financially betrayed, wives, partners, small business owners who trusted the wrong signatures. I was done chasing fraud. Now I was teaching others how to catch it before it caught them. He built a web of lies. I learned to weave safety nets. The first client walked in trembling, a woman in her late 30s, designer bag, shaky voice. Her husband had drained their joint account and vanished. I saw myself from 2 years ago, just less angry, more afraid. She said, "I don't even know where to start." I smiled, gently pushing a pen toward her. I said, "Right here. The beginning is always a signature." The art of rebuilding. Healing wasn't soft, it was forensic. By the 6th month, I had 6 clients. By the first year, 22. Each case felt personal, not because of their losses, but because of their patterns. Trust is a currency. When it's stolen, people stop investing in themselves. I taught them to audit not just accounts, but choices, to trace emotional withdrawals, to identify red flags like missing receipts and misplaced empathy. Grant Financial Integrity became a whisper in the industry, the firm that helped you recover more than money. And slowly, investors began to notice. A venture fund approached offering to expand the firm, but I said no. I wasn't building an empire. I was building a mirror for women to see their own strength reflected back in numbers. He chased returns, I chased redemption. There was a knock on my office door one morning. Soft, hesitant. When I looked up, she stood there. My daughter, Ella. 19 now. Eyes sharper than mine ever were at her age. "Are you hiring interns?" she asked. I laughed. Unpaid, overworked, and undercredited. She smiled. "So, yes?" I nodded. And just like that, my greatest investment walked in. For weeks, she helped file reports, run analysis, and write awareness blogs for the firm's social media. But one night, as we were reviewing a client's data together, she asked, "Do you ever wish things had gone differently with Dad?" I paused, then closed the laptop. "No," I said softly, "because if he hadn't left, I'd still be auditing someone else's dream." The moment he treated me as disposable, I became indestructible. The legacy written in gold. Legacies aren't inherited, they're calculated. 2 years later, Grant Financial Integrity hosted its first conference, Women in Financial Resilience. Tickets sold out in 48 hours. The same media outlets that once covered Brandon's downfall were now interviewing me about empowerment, ethics, and emotional intelligence in finance. I wore a simple black dress, not expensive, but powerful in its simplicity. When the cameras flashed, I smiled without guilt. Not every redemption needs a villain, but mine had one, and I thanked him silently for the education. Later that night, as the event hall emptied, I stood alone under the dim lights. On the stage behind me, the logo glowed. GFI, integrity in every transaction. Martin approached, older, proud. He said, "You did what most people can't." "What's that?" He smiled. You turned heartbreak into a business model. I laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that doesn't echo, it resonates. He handed me an envelope, a note from the SEC. They'd closed the final chapter on Brandon's case. Sentence served. Probation denied. I looked out the window. The city lights shimmered like data points. He lost everything chasing profit. I gained everything proving value. When I went home, I poured another glass of wine. Not to forget, but to remember how far clarity had brought me. Ella was working late on her laptop. Mom, your quote is trending online again. I raised a brow. Which one? The moment he treated me as disposable, she looked up, I became indestructible. We laughed, and for the first time, it felt like peace wasn't a reward. It was just stability. The next morning, I arrived early at the office. The sun hit the plaque on the wall just right, the gold cufflinks gleaming beneath it. For a second, I thought about removing them. Then I didn't. Because they weren't trophies, they were timestamps, proof that even the worst parts of our story can be repurposed. I turned to the window, watching the city hum alive again. A new day, a clean sheet, a fresh balance. I whispered to myself, half memo, half mantra, he built an empire on deceit. I built a legacy on the ruins. Justice wasn't the end of my story. It was the capital I built my future on.